For over 30 years, Kansas detectives and reporters searched for a serial killer who was taunting them from plain sight.
The most infamous unsolved serial killing spree in Wichita history.
When they finally zeroed in on their suspect, their discovery would shake the community and the world. The shocking killings began in Wichita, Kansas in 1974.
Crime did not happen in Wichita, Kansas. Crime happened in the big city.
The bodies of parents Joseph and Julia Otero and their two youngest children, Joseph Jr. and Josephine, were discovered in their home one afternoon when their three older children arrived home from school.
Went through the door, saw my mom and my dad there tied up and dead.
Over the next 3 years, 3 women were murdered: Kathleen Bright, Shirley Vann, and Nancy Fox, with their cases going unsolved.
In 1974, we couldn't even spell DNA. The technology didn't exist back then.
Their deaths would be linked in 1978 when an anonymous letter was sent to a local TV station. In it, the writer claimed responsibility for the murders, as well as the Otero family, and blamed his actions on X Factor.
Factor X is the demon inside of me, he says, that caused me to have to torture people and kill people.
Police realized they had a serial killer on their hands, and he would go by the name he gave himself:
BTK, for bind, torture, kill.
Police had no leads until 2004, when they declared the investigation to be a cold case. This inspired BTK to reach back out again.
The killer taunted the community by sending letters to the media, police, and others.
At one point, police received a doll bound at the hands and feet with a plastic bag over its head.
Now women throughout Wichita are worrying about their safety.
Then a local paper received a letter detailing another murder.
Vicki Wegerly in 1986. He enclosed a copy of her driver's license.
In his letters to the police, BTK asked if he'd be traceable if he sent them a floppy disk. Hoping to trick him, police said that they wouldn't be able to track anything that he sends. And in February 2005, they received a floppy disk.
Police were able to find metadata from a deleted document that contained the name of his church and the first name, Dennis.
It was discovered that the church president was a man named Dennis Rader.
Authorities reportedly obtained a DNA sample from one of his daughter's pap smears and matched it to DNA BTK left at the Otero's home.
After 3 decades, BTK was finally arrested.
His spree lasted from 1974 to 1991, during which time he claimed 10 lives.
But who was Dennis Rader, and how did he become BTK?
Dennis Rader, as a child, had a perfectly normal upbringing.
He was described as polite by his neighbors.
A local Boy Scout leader, churchgoer, Air Force veteran, husband and father, admitted to being BTK.
Despite his normal appearance, the twisted persona was lurking below.
He says, I knew from a young age that I had Factor X.
For years, Dennis stalked and preyed upon local women.
I had many, what I call them, projects. They were different people in the town that I followed, watched.
After each of his murders, he would go into cooling off periods where he would dress in women's clothing and photographed himself tied up.
It took a while for Dennis Rader to start talking, but once he did, he told police more than they bargained for.
When he was caught, he revealed that he was planning his next murder.
The only regret he showed during this was that there weren't more victims.
After his 2005 arrest, Rader's wife was granted an emergency divorce.
People were shocked to learn the killer had been living among them the whole time.
His daughter Carrie published a book about her experiences, sharing how shocked she was to discover her father had committed such atrocious crimes.
And then he says, your dad has been arrested as BTK. And I was like, I think I'm gonna pass out.
Carrie says she has since forgiven him and writes to him regularly.
I had to learn how to grieve the loss of somebody I loved very much that no one else loved anymore.
Dennis Rader has been diagnosed as a narcissistic psychopath with a complete lack of empathy.
10 counts occurred because you wanted to satisfy a sexual fantasy, is that correct?
Yes.
At nearly 80 years old, he's serving 10 consecutive life sentences and will go down in history as the killer who was outsmarted by modern technology and his own inflated ego.
This fellow takes advantage of people, he is disloyal, he is contemptful, and he manipulates everyone he runs into.